Check, check, check. Wow. Sometimes in life, you just gotta roll with the punches. This is like my 7th time. Swear. I think this is my 7th time trying to record this. Wow. Anyways, on that note, welcome to episode 7 of Real Distracted. Here, where we just keep on pushing on. You fuck up the episode, start over. That's how it goes. So today we are episode 7. We're on episode 7. And what better movie to select to talk about other than the movie 7? I couldn't think of another one. And I have an interesting story of the first time I saw 7, and that was also my first date. So the first time I saw 7 was the first date of my life. I was 15 years old. I went with a girl who I thought liked me. I had a huge crush on her. I can't believe she was giving me the time of day. She was like beautiful and mature, and her mom let her borrow the car. I think she had just got her learner's permit, and I just moved to Tampa and I knew no one. And there's a connection between my story and the writer, Walker. The writer is, let me get some better light. So, all right, let's get into it. So the writer, the guy who came up with the story, David Fincher is the director, and hands down, he's one of the best filmmakers of all time. If alive and in the future, he's going to go down as one of the best filmmakers to ever do it. So the guy who wrote the story and who also wrote the screenplay, his name is Andrew Kevin Walker. He's known for having written 7 in 1995, for which he earned a nomination for the BAFTA Award for Best Original Screenplay, as well as several other films, including 8mm and Sleepy Hollow, 99, both in 99. So this guy, Andrew Kevin Walker, he's an aspiring writer, based 7 on his experiences of moving from a suburban setting to New York City during a period of rising crime and drug addiction in the late 1980s.
7, hold on.
That's not even my desk.
You can expect 5 more of these.
Fincher had accidentally been sent my first draft. And so he said, "Oh, I'm interested in this." Fincher was is incredibly collaborative. He's one of the people who considers, I always say if he had the patience, he could just write it himself. He's exceedingly specific, which as a writer you will and do find incredibly wonderful. You'd never get make it 15% scarier or 10% funnier. He's incredibly specific. He's incredibly specific with dialogue and stuff. You just end up scribbling everything down, kind of hoping that you get all the great ideas he has. He has a point of view for every single scene. He has you participate in the process. He doesn't understand why somebody would come in and see a blueprint that you've done for a beautiful yacht and why they would want to come in and make that into a house instead. So, and the other great thing about him is you'll proceed along the lines writing something for Fincher specifically, and then you take it to the powers that be. And if they don't want to make it, you just go, okay, let's not make it. He doesn't bend over backwards to try and make it into a different thing, but he's amazing, and as evidenced by his work, and he elevates material as evidenced by what he did to 7, because he exceeded my expectations in every way.
An Italian film company optioned his script, but following financial difficulties, the rights were sold to New Line Cinema. Studio executives were opposed to the script's bleak conclusion, insisting on a more mainstream and optimistic outcome. Fincher, determined to reestablish himself after a career setback, with his directorial debut, Alien 3, was mistakenly sent Walker's original script and convinced of its merit, committing to directing the project only if the original ending remained intact. Principal photography took place in Los Angeles between December 94 and March 95 on a $33 to $34 million budget. So, Se7en just was incredible. I mean, 15 years old, I'm watching this movie, and it just blew me away. For the first time, I'm also with this girl that I'm super nervous, that I can't even believe I'm with her. And I remember one night I get a call. So let me back up a little bit. So I moved to Tampa when I was 15, and that's a whole nother show. But it was just me and my mom. I was raised in Davie, Florida, and around Davie, and we lived in the inner city of Fort Lauderdale too for a time, but we lived in Davie, Fort Lauderdale, Plantation, Hollywood, Pembroke Pines, all around there. These are all just general, just areas, but moved to Tampa and I knew no one. I felt so, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about depression in this episode because that's something that I struggle with. Along with the ADHD, I also struggle with depression. And one of the positive things is in my life for whatever I'm going through, and I realize that it can be temporary. I've been through it so much in my life that you go through sometimes these long periods of where you just feel depressed. And just last night, I was thinking about how I feel like I'm starting to come through this phase that I'm having right now, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. I'm not a clinician, but other people could probably relate and call it different things, phases or bouts, or who knows. I started getting creative, and just last night, I came up with a concept for an idea. I came up with a premise. And the reason why I'm even bringing it up here is because it's something that I can really, really get behind, and it's something that I'm going to. Even if it's a little bit, I'm going to be writing a little bit every day. No matter what, I'm going to share it with somebody, whatever form it's in, a screenplay form or a short story form. I'd say within time, I'm going to share it. I have a premise. I don't want to talk too much about it other than it deals with depression and mental illness and overcoming it or making it through, with the help of other people. So that the theme of this episode is I'd like to share the stories that I've been through, some really funny ones, and then also people that have helped me. And believe it or not, there's a guy that really helped me. I'm a sober person. I don't drink, and I am in recovery. I don't go to a whole lot of meetings. At one point I did, and they helped me at a phase. The first couple years, I went all the time. And I'll just say it's a 12-step group organization, and where everybody helps each other. And a guy that I asked to be my sponsor, who became my friend, who is to this day is probably the wisest person I've ever met. He'd use the word. He would use the word in meetings. He would say, when he would ask to share, they'd ask to tell his story because he had an incredible story. He would say, I am where I was, and he would use the word militant atheist. But he would talk about the 7 deadly sins, which I thought it was weird. And it was more anger and fear is what he said his philosophy that he took all the 7 deadly sins and he whittled them down or compiled them to the two main things. And he'd say that all of his thoughts are all filtered through fear and anger. And from a psychological standpoint, there's so much truth to that. And I related so much. I'm like, this guy's like reading my mind. He's helping break down, such an intelligent guy, and he's helping break down this complex psychological shit that, you know, a simple person like me doesn't have the knowledge. I'm not saying I don't have I definitely have the capacity, but I don't know what he's talking about. I just know the feeling. So when he started breaking this down of like, yes, there's, and this is what the movie Se7en's about. I'm going to get into the movie and how amazing the movie is, but I'm going to start out with a little bit of, you know, as I'm saying, my personal story. So he would talk about how, you know, we all have these, or they call them the cardinal sins. And it's, you know, sloth, pride, envy, lust. So a lot of this, like everything can be natural to a certain degree, like pride. You want to be proud. You just did something, you know, your kid did something you're proud of. You worked really hard, you're proud, but you can also take it to excess. It's almost like the yin yang thing. There's a little bit of good, and you can overdo anything. You can and I don't want to get off track, but he would talk about friendship and how important people that you cared about are, and people that care about you. And he would say, like, say a bad relationship, for example, or a job that you hate. Let's just say you hate this boss, or somebody disrespected you at work. You're getting ready to, and he would say in these meetings that we would have, he would say, I have two modes. One, I'm either going to cower and I'm going to run away because I don't want to deal with conflict, or two, I'm going to punch you in the face. And I have nothing in between. And I fucking related to that so much, because you don't want to deal with conflict. Things get too hard. You're scared. Or the other one is you're angry and you're going to go the other way. So he would say, I have two main things. And he would relate all these cardinal sins to the I don't know, just his philosophy on it was incredible. And the guy was an atheist. He didn't give a crap about the Bible. He just thought that this as a philosophy of, so that was just incredible. I just wanted to add that to my personal story. So now, a fun little interesting thing while we get started on the movie. So preparing for this episode, I did just like I had done the last few episodes, where I just took an extreme amount of notes. I took so many notes on the Abyss episode, and that was my first episode actually adding video, that I recorded that like 5 times. I think I did 4 full records. And then the 5th one, after the 5th time, I mean, I've got a headache. I'm just exhausted. I finally finished the episode. But prior to filming, I wanted to mention this real quick. Prior to filming or recording the episode for The Abyss, I had called my good friend Andy, and he's got a podcast called People Are the Enemy. And he just happened to be recording while I'm calling him for advice, or, hey man, I'm getting ready to record, wish me luck, or you got any pointers or whatever. And I record, and he just happens to be recording his podcast, and he's like, hey, I was just talking about you. And he said something nice about my show, and he promoted my show. And on the 4 fully recorded episodes that I had to delete and start over, I mentioned him and thanked him on every single one of those. But by the time the 5th one came around, I was so just trying to finish the fucking thing that I forgot to mention. So I want to rewind a little bit and say thank you, and also help promote his show. It's called People Are the Enemy, and his show comes out every Monday, I believe. And It comes out every week, and he's on about over 350 episodes, and he's got a great show. He tells really funny stories, and he talks about music and pop culture and just a bunch of different things. Very interesting. And he's got a 2-part show, and he talks about his books. He's a novelist. He's working on his 12th novel. So I just wanted to thank him for helping promote my show and sharing with his listeners. And I want to do the same. I know I maybe not have a bunch of listeners right now, but hey, anybody who is listening, I appreciate it, including him. Thank you, anybody, for listening to the show. Again, this is episode 7. So let me show a little show and tell really quick. So I go and I get this thing right here. This is the episode, God, my brain's mush. So this is my 7th time recording it. So I'm preparing for the show. I'm watching all these interviews. I'm gonna have to relax on this one because I'm getting all stressed out about it. So I go and I start watching YouTube videos about David Fincher and his history. I start learning about. It became mostly about him. I got intrigued. I became intrigued mostly about David Fincher, the person, and the artist.
So I
and
kind
his
of
story.
retreated back to doing television commercials and had no expectation that I would ever be employable again. And I got sent a script, and it was 7. And I got to John Doe walks into the police station and gives himself up. And I was holding the script, like I knew how many pages were left, and I was going, you can't do this. This is against the rules. So I read to the end and I thought, this is insane. So I called my agent and I said, this head in the box ending it's unbelievable. How do I? He said, oh my God, I sent you the wrong draft.
No.
That's the first draft. I said, what? He said, yeah, there's 11 drafts. Do you want me to say it? And I said, no, this is the one. He goes, well, I mean, I don't think they're gonna make that one. So I said, okay. And I went out and started meeting cast, and I met this long, blonde-haired actor who had just gotten off this movie, Legends of the Fall. And I told him I wanted to make The French Connection. And we hit it off, and I was driving in my car back to the office, and I got a call saying, Brad wants to do it. Oh. And I called Arnold Kopelson, and Arnold Kopelson said, would you like to talk to Morgan Freeman? I said, we can't send the script to Morgan. Morgan Freeman's a genius. If we send him the script, he'll never speak to me. He said, no. I sent it to him. He likes it. He wants to talk to you. So I called Morgan Freeman, and he said, I'd love to do this. And we did it.
Kevin Spacey's perfect in that, but
he's good.
He's good. He's good. But you nearly couldn't afford him, is that right? He was kind of an expensive.
So Spacey came in and read and killed it, and we were like, Spacey's the guy we should get. And New Line said his quotes are too high, and so we continued to read people, and finally, I think it was we were shooting. And Brad said, what's going on with Spacey? We're going to get Spacey. And I said, they're running me around the block on his quote. And he said, fuck that. And he got on the phone and he was like, you got to get Kevin Spacey. And they all said, oh, of course, that's a great idea.
I was most intrigued, especially an aspiring filmmaker such as myself. I'm intrigued with David Fincher, the filmmaker. And then his story. I'll probably do a whole episode on him. But the guy, in short, the guy started out doing special effects, and he started doing music videos. He worked with Madonna mainly. One of his people said that Madonna was his muse, and he did the In Vogue video. He did George Michael Freedom 1990, which was like amazing. These are all like little films. Stylistic, beautiful, black and white, some of them just original looking. And then he did Janie's Got a Gun video with Aerosmith, which was like its own short film. It's incredible that I'm just finding all this out now. Then his first movie, he does Alien 3.
That was not a great experience for David. First movie, so many players involved from the previous 2, everything. was complicated and difficult.
Frustrated at being overruled, Fincher walks off the film before the edit is finished. He later claims he'd rather get colon cancer than direct another movie. But when a dark screenplay involving a faceless serial killer crosses his path 2 years later, the director jumps at the chance to take creative control again.
That movie is pretty legendary for the title sequence.
He really used symbols and texture and tone and colors. Every single thing that went in front of his lens was touched by his vision. And you could kind of see that you're about to enter into the crazy mind of a serial killer.
He's never going to do a film again. And he ends up finding Seven. So did Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt found the, I think Fincher gave Brad Pitt the script for Seven. And they got it. They got the accidental version. The writer, Andrew Kevin Walker, wrote it 13 different times. David Fincher accidentally got the one that the studios didn't want to make. The What's in the Box, the film that we actually saw, the crazy, groundbreaking, very uncomfortable, but amazing, gripping story that we saw in Seven. The studios didn't want that movie to be made. They wanted to send Fincher over one of the last, like the 12th or 13th edit, but he got the original and he was like, I'm making this. And Brad Pitt said, if we don't make this the way this twist ending, that the one that we wanted, that the one that they made, he said he's going to leave. So in the years since its release, the critical reception has been more positive. The film has inspired a number of TV series and films with its aesthetic, music, and premise. Its title sequence, which depicts the killer preparing for his actions in the film, is considered an important design innovation that sparked a renewed interest in title design, while the film's twist ending has been named as one of the most shocking and unforgettable in cinematic history. I'll try to skim over the plot. For people who haven't seen Seven, if you've never seen it, you should see it. Even if you don't, it's not quite a horror movie. It's a cop movie. It's a psychological drama cop movie that just happens to be pretty graphic. In an unnamed city overcome with violent crime and corruption, disillusioned police detective William Somerset is 1 week from retirement. He is partnered with David Mills, a young, short-tempered, idealistic detective who recently relocated to the city with his wife, Tracy. On Monday, Somerset and Mills investigate an obese man who was forced to eat until his stomach burst, killing him. The detectives find the word gluttony written on the wall. Somerset, considering the case too extreme for his last investigation, asks to be reassigned, but the request is denied. The following day, another victim who had been forced to cut 1 pound of his flesh from his body was found. The crime scene is marked greed. Clues at the scene lead Somerset and Mills to the sloth victim, a drug-dealing pederast whom they find emaciated and restrained to a bed. Photographs reveal the victim was restrained for exactly 1 year. Somerset surmises the murders are based on the Christian concept of the 7 deadly sins. Tracy invites Somerset to share. Okay, so there's one of the interesting facts which I like to go over is the behind the scenes stuff. So, all right, so I told you guys about my first date. That was the first time I saw the movie in Tampa. Talked about moving there. Talked about the story of the friend in the recovery would talk about, and how he would relate it, which I really think is interesting. So I'll talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff. So okay, the sloth scene. The sloth scene shocked the actors as much as the audience, particularly focusing on John C. McGinley's genuine reaction. Okay, so in that scene where what I was just talking about while I was reading the plot, where at this time I think it's their third murder they're investigating, find out there's a connection, it's a serial killer. They get the SWAT team, they get a warrant because the fingerprints are tied, so they're following this just an awful, evil human being of a person that they talk about. They don't show these people alive, but they're talking about how nasty he was and how he got out of prison on a technicality, and this guy's just a real awful human being. And they think he is the killer, but they go to find out that he is a victim, and it's this emaciated human laying on a bed tied to it, and it's just awful. It's just disgusting looking. He's super skinny, but he's being fed. He's being kept alive for a year, and they show this stack of Polaroids. Somerset, which is Morgan Freeman, he shows Brad Pitt, Detective Mills. He says, "Look at this. This is 365 pictures, 365 days. He knew that we were going to be here." And when John C. McGinley, who plays one of the SWAT officers, he goes, yeah, he leans in and he's talking shit to the guy. He says, "Yeah, this is what you got, you piece of shit." And the guy coughs out of fear. He's like, "Oh." And the actor, it's so scary in the movie because it's this jolt. But in real life, David Fincher did not tell the SWAT actors and everybody on set that was going to happen because he wanted. And this is a director. Everything that I've learned about David Fincher as a director, he is somebody that does not give a fuck how many takes he is going to get. He doesn't care. He talked about.
I have to ask you about the takes issue. You famously have a lot of takes.
My philosophy is you spend $250,000 on a set. You're going to put it on a soundstage. It costs you $5,000 a day. You're going to put $8,000 worth of lights in the. You're going to bring a $150,000 crew in. You're going to bring actors in from all over the world. You're going to put them up in hotels. They're going to come there, and the idea is to get them out as soon as possible. Who wants to live like that? If I fly you in from Iceland and we're supposed to do one day, I want to make sure that we get it. There's a point in time, whenever an actor says, "I'm sorry, I lost. Can we start again?" They were great. Right before they pull the pin on the whole thing, they were great. And I've shown, it's that thing of when you fall face first into something and you kind of know, you know what the text is and you know what you're supposed to be doing, but you lose your train of thought. It's almost always the most exciting thing. Something is really, and I almost know when somebody's going, "Oh fuck, I'm sorry." It's kind of when you're doing this, and then everything goes kaflooey. But my process is about, I'm going to give you 17, 18, 25 bites at the apple, because if you're smart and if you're conscientious, you've worked out in your head as an actor what it is you want to present me.
Like flying, he's like, "I'm going to fly a crew from Iceland. There's going to be $100,000 worth of crew. There's going to be $20,000 lenses. There's going to be all this. There's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars for this scene. And I finally set you guys up to film this scene that I really need. And I'm going to try to hurry it up and get you out of here in 1 or 2 takes. No, I'm going to use it." And I thought about that. I'm like, wow, that's pretty interesting. He knows what he wants. And as a matter of fact, let me show you a clip right now. There's an interesting clip of other actors and other filmmakers / actors like Ben Affleck talking about their admiration for David Fincher and how much they loved working with him and what they admire about him. Check this out.
Se7en is the story of 2 detectives, played by Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt, on the hunt for a murderer who calls himself John Doe. He's killing people guilty of each of the 7 deadly sins.
There was this beautiful shot of the guy in a bowl of spaghetti or something. David Fincher's kind of juxtaposing some pretty ugly things with some pretty beautiful filmmaking. And it's that odd juxtaposition that is unnerving.
He really created a new tableau. Everything around it is atmosphere, but you then focus on exactly what he wants you to pay attention to.
There were 7 crimes that were staged perfectly, and psychologically that all just builds into this amazing ride that David is so gifted at crafting.
Fincher merges the dark tone of classic film noir with edgy music video aesthetics. For many, the result is nothing less than a reinvention of the thriller.
The reason why I think David works in that genre is because, strangely, it kind of helps him explore notions of hypocrisy.
We see a deadly sin on every street corner, in every home, and we tolerate it.
Kevin Spacey is John Doe, the killer with a message for the masses.
Certainly Kevin Spacey's character in Seven was a perfectionist as he laid out those, murder sequences. But I think David shares a lot with him, the drive and the perfection.
Fincher's meticulous crafting culminates in Seven's final sequence. Even handcuffed and at gunpoint, John Doe pulls off the last kill in this lethal masterpiece.
John Doe has the upper hand. Mills!
It works so flawlessly.
What?
What's in the box?
Put the gun down.
show you with the box. What was in the box?
Because I envy your normal life.
Put the gun down, David.
It seems that envy is my sin.
Oh, what's in the box?
The way that the tension plays out, the stakes are kind of almost operatic in terms of life and death.
John Doe, like the filmmaker, is in total control.
I think Seven is a perfect movie. I watch it before everything I direct and multiple times while I'm in the middle of shooting. It's a true masterpiece.
The film gets rave reviews and grosses $320 million worldwide, making Fincher a new force in Hollywood. He now has the freedom to take on even riskier projects.
When I look at the movies that I consider to be the sort of David Fincher movies, I see, at their root, a profound objection to fraudulence and hypocrisy that mirrors, David's own personal feelings.
That's awesome, David Fincher. All right, so moving right along. So, moving forward in the plot. Tracy, which is played by Gwyneth Paltrow, invites Somerset to share supper with her at Mills, helping the detectives overcome their mutual hostility. On Friday, Tracy meets privately with Somerset because she has no other acquaintances in the city. She reveals her unhappiness at moving there, especially after learning she is pregnant, and believes that the city is an unfit place to raise a child. Somerset sympathizes with Tracy, having persuaded his former girlfriend to abort their child for similar reasons and regretting it ever since. He advises Tracy to inform Mills only if she intends to keep the child. A remark by Mills inspires Somerset to research libraries. So, I forgot what he said, but Brad Pitt's character says something like, "Oh, the guy's a fucking nut job." He said, Somerset is trying to tell Brad Pitt, Mills, he's trying to tell him, this guy he's not a regular idiot killer. This guy, he took time. He's like, oh, he's just a nutbag with a library card. And then an idea goes off in his head. So a remark by Mills inspires Somerset to research libraries for anyone checking out books based on the 7 deadly sins, leading the pair to John Doe's apartment. Unexpectedly, Doe returns home and is pursued by Mills. Doe incapacitates Mills by striking him with a tire iron and holds him at gunpoint, but chooses to leave him alive and flees. The police investigate Doe's apartment, finding a large amount of cash, hundreds of Doe's notebooks, and photographs of some victims. The cache includes images of Somerset and Mills by a person that they believed was an intrusive journalist at the sloth crime scene. Doe calls the apartment and speaks of his admiration for Mills. On Saturday, by the way, another fun, interesting behind the scenes. So in order to do all of those notebooks in that apartment, that crazy apartment with all these samples of God knows what, a neon cross lit up in red and just thousands of notebooks. David Fincher he made a creative decision that he wanted it to be as real as possible. He wanted when you walked in that apartment, even though that apartment was probably only on screen for a minute or two, it took 2 months and $15,000 to hire people to just write in what do they call it? Composition, the composition notebooks and spiral notebooks. They had people writing for months, like I don't know how many, dozens, hundreds, I don't know, but it cost them $15,000 to do that. So on Saturday, Somerset and Mills investigate the fourth victim, Lust, a prostitute who has been raped with a custom-made blade strap-on by a man held at gunpoint. The following day, the Pride victim is found. That is a really, really remarkable acting job by that actor. I forgot his name, but he was the guy that was shaking and just in shock. And to do that scene, that's just hard to watch. Like he's pushing the limits, you know. But that scene, the actor, in order to get himself, because he was like, it seemed so real. He was just so shaken up he could barely breathe. So what he did in preparation for that scene, those takes, he would make himself hyperventilate. So he would do it with a bag or something, and he would just force himself to hyperventilate, and then the director would say, action. Fourth victim, Lust, a prostitute, had been raped with a custom-made bladed strap-on by a man held at gunpoint. The following day, Pride victim is found, a model whom Doe facially disfigured. Unable to live without her beauty, she committed suicide. As Somerset and Mills return to the police station, Doe arrives covered in blood and surrenders himself and threatens to plead insanity at his trial. That's the first time that you see the face of Kevin Spacey. His fingertips are bloody, and he's got blood from his previous murder, whatever he just did, which in the end you find out when you rewatch the movie. It's like, oh my God, it's really hard to watch, but it's such a great story. When he says detective and he walks in, detective, and everybody in that police station just stops. It's like you could hear a pin drop, and he just holds up his hands, and Mills recognizes him with his broken arm. By the way, Brad Pitt really broke his arm. They had to write that cast into the story because Brad Pitt was doing most of his own stunts the whole film. So when he was running and chasing, I wanted to stop for a second. When Brad Pitt was chasing John Doe after they had illegally gone to his apartment, the way they found him was through this, like, they had to pay off this FBI agent to help them search for what's now called the Patriot Act. You know what I mean? They could look up they don't need a warrant now to find anybody, the government. But so while Brad Pitt was chasing Kevin Spacey, or those scenes, the whole entire set and the city, the streets, everything, they had soaked it with water. They said through that whole movie they had to learn what it was like to work in water because they were soaked all the time. And I guess Brad Pitt slipped. He not only broke his arm, but he tore tendons and got a really bad injury, but he only had 55 days to shoot because of his next film that he was doing, which was I don't remember what the next thing he had to work on, but it was good, whatever the next thing was. Or 12 Monkeys, that's what it was. So anyways, the John Doe finally shows himself. You see that it's Kevin Spacey. And Kevin Spacey, that's the first time you see him. But Kevin Spacey, which is awesome, I don't know if I said this at the beginning, they almost didn't get him. Brad Pitt's, because Kevin Spacey wanted more money than they wanted to give him. And they looked at 100 actors to play John Doe once they had already cast the three others, Gwyneth Paltrow, Brad Pitt, and Morgan Freeman. they just couldn't find anybody that they liked. And Brad Pitt finally went to the studio people and said, "Hey, we really need this guy." And he carried weight on what he said. But anyways, he walks in, the classic, he walks into the police station, and Doe arrives, covers it in blood, surrenders himself, and he threatens to plead insanity as his trial, potentially escaping punishment unless Mills and Somerset escort him to an undisclosed location where they will find the envy and wrath victims. During the drive, Doe says he believes God has chosen him to send a message about the ubiquity of and apathy towards sin. Doe has no remorse for his victims, believing the shocking murders will force society to pay attention to him. Doe leads the detectives to a remote... Oh, I lost my shit. Oh, I lost it. Well, it wasn't meant to be then. So you know what happens in the end. The most incredible ending. And it's crazy that that the studios let them keep that, because it was so risque, you know. It was just so at the edge of anything we've seen before, you know. So like I said, one of the behind the scenes things, Brad Pitt's injury, Kevin Spacey's casting. Kevin Spacey was a last minute choice. And, well, one of the interesting things, forgot to say that, Kevin Spacey asks that his name be left off the top billing at the beginning of the film, because he felt that if his name were to be seen in the opening credits, then they were going to know who the bad guy was going to be. So at the very end of the film, the credits roll up and backwards, and it starts with Kevin Spacey as John Doe, which I thought is really cool because it caught you off guard. Visual aesthetic. Talk about how Fincher wanted the film to feel like a black and white movie shot in color, using the bleach bypass technique for high contrast, which from what I read, that is where they leave, I guess there's silver inside of the film, but to have more contrast, they left more silver in the film. So the iconic opening credits, they were low budget but highly effective opening credits sequence showing John Doe's disturbing journals and the ending debate. Brad Pitt, like I said, fought to keep the film's controversial ending, where his character kills John Doe after their gruesome discovery. Also, he wanted to cut to black after the sun. David Fincher, his original plan was to cut to black after the gunshot. That could have been a more interesting choice. But I'm glad, because you always want that. You want a little bit more. Like when things end, you want a little bit more. Like you feel like, I don't know, are we spoiled that way as far as fans and you know, movie watchers, movie goers? What I'm referring to is like where so Brad Pitt finally decides, spoiler alert, so the end, you find out that Brad Pitt's wife was murdered, and Brad Pitt did not know that she was pregnant, and he fulfilled the two last ones, which was vengeance and what the hell was the other one? Shit, I'm gonna fuck it up. I forgot what the last two were. Vengeance and envy, I think. He was envious of him. Oh, yeah, that's what it was, because he was envious that he had a wife and kids. And it's a sad ending. It's just, oh, my God, just awful. And you just feel like, what would you do in that situation? If you're Brad Pitt and you find out that that's what happened, without a doubt, you know, without a doubt. The only thing that when I watched the movie again last night, I thought, why the fuck didn't, I mean, of course it's a movie and it had to be that way, but why the fuck didn't Morgan Freeman go, when Kevin Spacey was egging him on and Brad Pitt couldn't see in the distance, Morgan Freeman's running, put the gun down, John Doe has the upper hand. And that shot is so beautifully done. The helicopters, the combination of the long view that the helicopter snipers can see, they're out in the middle of nowhere with the high, what do they call that? The high tensile, the power lines. They're out in the middle of these hills with this amber color, and then the contrast of them just looking very dark. But when Morgan Freeman is running at him and he's going, put the gun down, he's got the upper hand, whatever. When I found out that Kevin Spacey was saying, I killed your wife and she was pregnant with your kid, and he's like, no, this can't be true. If I was Morgan Freeman, I would have been like, dude, he's lying He's lying his ass off, dude. It's a lady. He found someone that looked like her. It's absolutely not true. I would have said whatever I would have had to say to get him to put the gun down so the guy didn't throw his life away. So the end shot was supposed to be bang, he kills Kevin Spacey, and then Fincher was going to cut it there. And that could have been a good ending, like, whoa. But the end where he added watching, maybe because of consequences. Who knows? I'd like to know more about that. Why did he add another minute or so of screen time? Because instead of that ending, what we got was Brad Pitt did commit the act. He murdered a man in cold blood. It was out of anger and it was the heat of passion because of what happened to him. But we saw him being taken away in a cop car. And then there's the last dialogue or any spoken words of the last words of the film are Ernest Hemingway said that the world is a wonderful place and worth fighting for. And he says, I agree with the second part. And that's the end there, which maybe it's because of consequences. I don't know. But when I think of something that's just bang, cut to black, the first thing you think of is Sopranos, which I can't wait to talk about The Sopranos because to me, that's one of the best shows, if not the best show ever made. It's like another world. It's another universe, another dimension of how good television can be. But I tried to re-record this. Like I said, this is my 7th time, so forgive me if I forgot. So I bought this. Okay, so I met the guy. If I'm telling you this again, forgive me. But so what happened was I can't order the DVD 7, and I want to get the DVD because of the DVD commentaries. I want to get the commentary so I can listen, get better notes, get a better feel of, I love learning things. Like if I listen to a podcast about movies, I love hearing something that I've never heard before. Like whatever, for example, maybe I told you today, you didn't know that David Fincher directed the En Vogue video. You didn't know that that Denzel Washington turned down the role that Brad Pitt got because it was too dark. So I wanted to learn, I like to find these extra things out however I can, online, reading, videos, YouTube, whatever. But I wanted to get the DVD, and I knew I wasn't going to find it locally without going to a million different places. So I'm like, well, let me see if somebody has it on Facebook Marketplace. So there's a guy that has it on Facebook Marketplace, And the only reason why I wanted to buy this DVD. So instead of buying one DVD for like, you know, $20, I got a whole bunch of them. Check this out. This is a score of all scores. So Be Cool, Big Lebowski, True Romance, Princess Bride, Requiem for a Dream, Crash, Being John Malkovich. And then there's a whole nother Zack and Miri, High Fidelity, Say Anything, 40-Year-Old Virgin, Napoleon Dynamite. There's like so many great movies in here. I'm like, oh, hell yeah. I'm going to watch a lot of movies and listen to commentaries. So I only bought this just to watch the DVD with the DVD commentary. So I get this, I bought the whole box, and I open it up, and the only disc that's missing out of all of them is the one that I need. This was the one, the disc one. So that's pretty interesting. But anyways, this has been episode 7. I really appreciate anybody listening, tuning in. I'm trying to think, what am I forgetting? Probably a lot. I always do that. By the time I stop recording, I'm going to be like, oh man, I spent hours on blah, 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 so I could talk about blah, blah, blah. But yeah, the movie 7 was amazing. And I think next time, I believe I'm going to go to the movies and talk about something that's out right now or that's coming out that's going to have a lot of buzz, or I'm going to do a series. I haven't done a series yet. And the thing about the series is, do I find something that only has one season, which is possible because I have 2 or 3 things that I want to do, and how can I keep that short? But hell, I don't know. I'm just kind of making up as I go, having a good time doing it. But hey, everybody that checked out the show, thank you very much. And we'll see you next time. This has been episode number 7. 4-7. See ya. Have a good one, guys. See ya. Boom.